Welcome here to the FWA, where I'm delighted to be joined by Chief Sports Writer Andy Dunn of The Mirror. It's been an action-packed week, that remarkable Champions League with that show-stopping performance at Wembley against Real Madrid, and then this weekend of upsets, and we were at the London Stadium discussing, weren't we, pre-match?
Yeah, and what we discussed pre-match came to fruition. It was a poor performance. There wasn't a lot of heart in the performance. Not a lot of players wanted the football when Liverpool got on top, and you could tell then. We discussed it pre-match, post-match. We sat in that press conference. You did that interview with Slaven Bilic, where you could tell he was a man who knew his fate. He was resigned to his fate.
Yeah, I think he immediately said, when I said, what's your bid to the chairman? He said, well, no person is bigger than the club. Did he know he was gone?
Yes, I think he did. I'm sure he knew at that stage. I'm sure he knew that game, that performance really. I'm sure he knew at the end, not so much the results. At the end, he probably looked at that performance and thought, that's a performance really that tells the board that I've basically, my connection with these players is broken beyond repair. I'm sure that was what he thought. Not so much the emphatic scoreline, but just that, and everyone could tell that when the fans left. There must have been possibly 30,000 fans leave with 15 minutes to go. So and he knows how that'll look to the owners. He knows how that will look to the board. So he pretty much, I think, was, and which is why in the press conference, interesting, in the written press conference, he was insisting on reminding us, and almost reminding himself, how strong I am. He says, I've come from a small country, I've got to this level, I believe in myself, I'm strong, I'm not a broken man. Basically saying, listen, I know what's coming, but it's not going to break me. And, so it proved. And in a way, it was a little bit, that it took, 36 hours before it was confirmed. I thought it was a little bit, I don't know, I can understand why they didn't do it Saturday night, even though they actually knew he was going. But I think the fact that then David Moyes, we all knew even then that he was, probably going to get the job. It's probably, maybe they could have done a bit quicker, but, and he's handled himself well, Slaven, and no hard feelings. He said that today, so it's always sad when you get a guy who's a really likeable manager, always seems a very good guy to have around the place, good in charge, and the fans liked him, but, that performance was a sackable performance.
David Moyes now has the battle of winning over fans that made it very clear that the relegation isn't, and subsequent resignation isn't the assets they want of a manager coming in.
No, exactly. It's not. It's going to be really tough for him. I think people are pretty much divided in the press, in the media, pretty much divided. We've all dealt with David a long time. And he's been good. He's been a good manager for journalists to deal with, a good manager for football writers to deal with. The Football Writers Association has always had a very good rapport with David Moyes. When he was manager of Everton, he was actually sort of one of the guys who took it upon himself to try and improve relations between managers and the football writers. If there was a function, he would try and encourage his members, his fellow managers to come along. So he's always had a positive relationship with football writers. But again, there is no getting away from the fact that in his last two jobs, because I think Man United was tough, and that was just a season. I think there were mitigating circumstances. I wouldn't use that as a stick to beat him with. But his last two jobs, he won 8 games in 42 at Sunderland. He won 12 in 43 at Real Sociedad. The way he came across in the Sunderland job will not, as basically not being ultra positive, hasn't gone down with West Ham fans. But, if you take his body of work as a whole from Everton, then, it might be. And I know West Ham as well. I've dealt with him before, and I think he's been offered that job before. So he's experienced, that's for sure.
He certainly is. Now, you were also then followed that up with the men right at the very top. Is this a fair headline for Manchester City, or would you agree it's more a case of beautiful, the fact that Sergio changed his boots?
Yeah. I'm not,
you were there?
Yes, I was there. The first thing you noticed, second half, he changed his boots. He actually got presented with a blue boot before on a plinth. It was quite over the top actually to celebrate. I know he's the top scorer, but it was actually quite over the top at the start of before the game actually. But That it's you would concentrate on that. And I think most inside most papers were concentrating on City and the way they performed. The chief thing for Raheem Sterling, I mean, it's I think I have a little bit of, and a lot of people, a lot of writers and a lot of people, other people have said that Wenger should, he shouldn't have said what he said about Raheem Sterling. But I think what he was trying to say was that Sterling he might not have just been referring to that particular incident. He was referring to the fact that Sterling can go down, fairly easily, which he did yesterday, but there was contact, obviously.
I want you to talk us through your opening paragraphs of your piece on Manchester City, because it illustrates beautifully. Pep the Perfectionist was the headline, but you talked about Sterling, this one moment.
It was that great moment. It was when Sterling was they were 1-0 up, and it was towards the end of the first half, and Sterling, there was a quick break, as City do, and he was through, and just one defender, I think it was probably Koscielny, and Sané was just waiting across. Everyone could see it was just a simple pass, and Sané would have literally a formality from 8, 9, 10 yards to make it 2-0 just before half-time, put the game beyond question. And Sterling, inexplicably, like he can do, overhit the ball so badly. Probably a double the strength it needed to be. The whole crowd, and Guardiola, first of all, he threw his water bottle, turned around, threw his water bottle at his bucket seat on the dugout, or whatever they call them now. Then he obviously he was swearing. He was absolutely furious. And funny enough, he'd been talking on Friday in the press conference about how Sterling still needed to work on doing the simple stuff well. He said he's got, I encourage him to beat players, to try different stuff. But he said he's got to get these simple passes well. He's got to get these better. He's got to work on these. And of course, you couldn't have seen a more simple pass. And he was furious. And actually, after it, again, in the press conference with the writers, he then said, Guardiola, in answer actually to a Spanish question, which was translated, he said, we could have had 5 or 6. He said, what not disappointed him, but what marked, what he wasn't too happy with was the final ball, referring to Sterling and referring to other opportunities as well. And that's the frightening thing. You feel there's more to come.
Yeah, just absolute perfectionist. Apoplectic? Do you have that
Apoplectic? Yes. He certainly
little
was.
joke.
Oh, apoplectic. I see what you mean. I see where you're coming from.
Because it's been quite a week for the headline writers, and here's another one that came from that match. Bye Sanchez. Also some talk in the papers, Mr. Hetherington saying that Manchester United interest on Ozil cooling as well. Are the Arsenal want-away stars good enough for the big guys?
But yeah, they're probably, judging on performances, saying on yesterday, you probably wouldn't say Ozil or Sanchez. But they're not going to, I mean City, again, notably, in the press conference, he was asked about Sanchez, who, to us all, most of us there, didn't have a particularly effective game. Yeah. Guardiola spoke about him. He didn't speak about him in specific terms of what he'd done that day. He spoke about him being a top class player. That was his opening words were, Alexis is a top class player.
So he might get in, and we're just not sure if he'd ever get in the team.
Exactly.
It has been a great week for headline writers. Some fantastic headlines after the Tottenham game as well. Winner and Louisa and salivating. He was in fantastic form, wasn't he?
He was. If we start on Mo Salah, he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. And again, he's someone. So much focus has been on Klopp's recruitment policy, and on who he hasn't bought, who he's not bought. He's not bought a replacement goalkeeper. A goalkeeper who many people think he should have another goalkeeper. That Mignolet maybe was made captain on Saturday is not quite up to it. He didn't buy a goalkeeper. He couldn't get Virgil van Dijk, but he didn't get anyone else. So it's been on, his recruitment policy has really been under heavy scrutiny from the newspapers every day almost. And yet he might have just pulled off the signing of the season. It's sort of gone under the radar, but Salah might well be the best bit of business in the summer of all the big signings. Bear in mind he was only £36 million.
And he's been rested from
and he scored It's 11 or 12 goals. 12, I think it is now. I'm not sure. 11 or 12 goals. It's remarkable.
I knew on Saturday after the mixed zone there's been a lot that's happened since
Yes,
then.
exactly.
We're going to have to race through these because we've got an England press conference to get
Indeed.
to. But really interesting, you talking about praising Pep and Poch for bringing on Sterling and the other stars rising. And also then James Ducker talking about Deitch and Houghton and how we also have to give them praise for the players that they're bringing on as well.
Well, exactly. We've got a player called up into the England squad now, just a late call up in Michael Keane, who, when he was with Dyche at Burnley, he developed him so much, and obviously now he's moved to Everton, and that's the type of player I think that, these guys, Dyche and who are developing players whose careers are, some not stalled. Stalled's the wrong word, but just need a boost. Whereas these guys, Pep and Pochettino, they're dealing with players who are already good, elite players, you'll call them. But these guys are adding strings to their bow. Raheem Sterling is getting extra dimensions to his game. John Stones is looking a better defender. You would expect them to improve them. They shouldn't be. These are good young players to start with. They're not taking these players out of nowhere and making them into good players. But they are just. I think that there's a special skill to taking really good players and just getting that little bit better.
So much to talk about. We've got to go, of course, Mourinho and Pep. Now the headlines, crisis. What crisis? But David Luiz, another falling out. And also the suggestion that is it just a 2-horse race for second?
I don't know if it's a 2-horse race for second. It's probably, I would have it down as a 5-horse race for second. I really would. I wouldn't rule Arsenal as a second place.
A 1-horse race for first.
But a 1-horse race, a 1-horse race for first, yes, I do think so. And these type of stories, the David Luiz bust-up, we love these. We love these. We normally get them from Chelsea. We're normally told about them beforehand. It's a great club for the info just coming out and then finally getting it confirmed.
Yes, it's notorious for that. Moving on, some really most sickening, awful read, and I think we can all say Santi, one of the technically most gifted, beautiful players, and we just wish him well. Originally coming from Spain, Jeremy Wilson, many of us following this up, but Santi, we all wish you.
We never knew to that extent, did we?
No,
we
never
knew.
There were concerns, weren't there?
Concerns about his career, but we never knew the sort of gruesomeness of the problem. Yes.
Ahead to England, and Gareth Southgate, certainly no pushover. No one is safe. The Ox axed, certainly Klopp saying to me that he really felt he proved he can push on and press on, literally. Yeah. But it's proving that Gareth is making sure the players prove themselves for England.
Exactly. Well, we'll see him. I think we'll see him today. We'll see him later in the week. And absolutely. I mean, never mind the Ox. I mean, Chris Smalling as well. I mean, that one particularly harsh, really. And he's made it clear, all the time Gareth has almost every get-together dropped in a little sort of, to make sure. The previous one, I remember him telling us there's 2 or 3 players here who don't deserve to be here. And we haven't heard an England manager say that before. And now this is clearly, I think he wants to get that message. And again, it's a good way of doing it. It's to get it out there in the newspapers that, actually, you know what? The impression we're getting from him is he doesn't mind us saying in the papers that Gareth Southgate, can be tough, basically. I think he wants that message out there.
Fight for your place for England. It's a shirt that's got to be earned. I'm going to start pressing 3 at the back. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting watch over the next 10 days.
It is. It is, especially with players that, to be perfectly honest, outside of their clubs, players who might not be overly familiar to the wider England fan base. Joe Gomez. I mean, I would suggest there's probably not many people outside of Liverpool fans who would be familiar at least with his game or the way he plays. Similar to Tammy Abraham, similar probably Ruben Loftus-Cheek.
We're going to be listening to them. This is Film Monday, so there's going to be a lot about them in the papers. And just for something a little different as well, if you were well aware, or who could have ever not missed, the story of Wayne Shaw. He was the second goalkeeper who slept overnight on a sofa bed at Sutton. He was very much the true fairy tale story until he bit into that. It was actually a pasty, wasn't it? Not a pie. He was ruined, went into depression. It really was a very sad story of someone being thrust into the limelight. Good news, this week he starts a job as a manager of Totton. In AFC Totton in the Evo Stick South Division won. I thought it was a lovely little story from David Woods, keeping an eye on what's happening in the lower divisions.
It's brilliant, yeah. It is brilliant. Because don't forget, I better be careful what I say here at FA headquarters, but I did think it was a little bit draconian to ban him. You know, I mean, I do think it was probably a bit silly, but yeah, and it's good to see.
From there, from everything to cover, it's a bit of a long one, might have to get the editing out, but so much this week, and we've got to touch on Tottenham. We're going to send some links to the best of that writing, and what a fantastic week in the Champions League.
It was just one of the great nights at Wembley for Spurs. Made it feel like home.
Thank you very much. On to England.
Thank you.